Hello, learners. Hope you are keeping well. Today, we're going to look at economic geography, and our main focus is going to be on the structure of the economy. The structure of the economy. All right. And here, we're going to look at the economic sectors that we're going to look at. We're going to define them, and we're going to give examples. All right, the sectors would be your primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary economic activities or sectors. We're also going to look at, and let me move my face a bit here, the contribution of the economic sectors to the South African economy, right? The value and contribution to the GDP and GNP and employment. That's going to be our main focus there. We're also going to use interpretation of statistics and graphic information. Now, you may ask, why graphic information? All right. It is important because when we get tested in exams, we on various occasions get graphs and stats and whatever. And by doing it beforehand, it prepares us for those questions because they may not be difficult questions, learners, but if we don't understand how to interpret that, it becomes a challenging question unnecessarily. Okay, so we're going to look at those things. Right now, let's start looking at the economic sectors. I'm going to put my face down here. All right. And the first economic sector that we're going to look at is the primary economic activity or sector. Right. I know you've done this before. All right, in your other grades and whatever. Okay, but it's good we do it first, and it's important we do the sectors first because later on in economic geography, we're going to take each sector and explore it to great depth. Okay, so let's start. So we said primary sector is the extracting or harvesting of products from the earth such as your basic foods, your vegetables, etc. You understand? And your raw materials, all right, like your gold, your iron ore, etc. So you can see here, these ladies are happy because they're producing quality food there. Can you see it? All right, your basic foods. And these strong men here, like me, all right, are busy mining and extracting raw materials such as gold and iron ore, etc. Okay, so we know it includes various things: agricultural farming, both subsistence and commercial. It includes mining, forestry, grazing for cattle, etc., hunting, gathering, fishing, quarrying, where you dynamite the area to get your gravel, etc. These are some of the many examples that of primary economic activity or sector. Okay, then let's go on, learners. Let's look at the secondary economic activity or sector. And this involves processing. Other words could be manufacturing, transforming of raw materials into products, or sometimes known as your goods. All right, that's more valuable. I do apologize. Sometimes my face may just stop moving. All right, my internet is not the best today. Okay, so don't laugh at me when I look funny and my face stops moving and my hands stop moving. Okay, let's get back. So it's products, goods. Like for instance, here, learners, you can take iron ore and produce iron and steel. Many of us won't just take the iron and steel and drive around. Okay, so it's a product that's produced, and we can have finished goods when we take that iron and steel and use it to make a car. Well, I hope our cars got iron and steel because sometimes when you kneel against the car, it bends. Okay, so I hope it has iron and steel in it. Right. So that's one of the things. And of course, manufacturing. All right, where you finished product is your food. You get your breakfast cereals, you eat it, your textiles, you understand. And of course, another finished product, your motor vehicle down here, what you can use in terms of motor vehicle manufacturing. All right, can you see there? There's this lady here doing textile manufacturing clothes. I admire her. I'm very scared to go near a sewing machine. I may sew my hands up. Okay, but that's the idea of secondary economic activities. And then we have tertiary economic activities or sector. All right. And this main thing is services to the consumers. All right. People like different services. So it's to the consumers who want that service. So it's a wide range. This is really wide range of activities. All right. For instance, we have commerce, your administration, people handling your accounts and whatever, transport, all right, financial, the money, the banks, the big boys, all right, real estate activities, selling of houses, your general businesses, your shops, etc., your personal services, education, all right, like this place here, the school. Okay. I wish all of you, I hope all of you are like this young man, eh? Got his hand up immediately. I'm sure y'all are geographers, so you'll always be smart and know the answers. Okay. So we have all that health, social worker, all services, like this Department of Public Health, Safety rather, is a service being offered. Okay. Right. And let's get on and we look at quaternary economic activities or sectors. This deals with information. Your main word is information. Yeah, it'll involve the getting of the information or gathering of the information like GIS does with remote sensing and whatever. All right. It's processing of the information. GIS is a perfect example of this. Eh? You process it and then you share, like in data sharing, you're sharing the information. All right. So it involves many things. All right. There's your GIS here. Okay. And there you can see research where you're getting your information from the people. All right. Primary data, etc. You're picking up. Can you see how the sections are related? All right. You're getting the stuff. Okay. Through research. So it'll involve things like information technology, geographic information systems, and your general research. Some of the examples of your quaternary. It's still, in terms of the other ones, smaller, but it's growing. Remember, at one stage, we just primary, tertiary, and primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, quaternary is a sector on its own and growing. Okay, right. Let's go on. So now we look at the relationship between the economic activities and sectors. All right. Actually, they are linked, learners, linked and are dependent on each other also. Okay, now let's look at why. The maize is farmed, of course, that's your primary. Okay, the production of breakfast cereals, there's the maize here. All right, the production of breakfast cereals is your secondary activity, all right, or economic activity. The supermarket selling the breakfast cereals is your tertiary. All right, can you see the flow here? All right, then research on people's preferences for type of breakfast cereals is your quaternary. Okay, so each one, in fact, the research is also important because what will happen here is, let's take this down here. All right, there's your shop selling it. All right, and your researcher making a big mess of it here down here. So let's take an example. Let's say research shows All right, that there's a huge buying of this product. You understand, of this breakfast cereal from your maize. Okay, huge buying of it. So what happens now? There's an increase in production here, which will have more raw materials, more cereals will be produced, more will be placed in the shop to be sold. If it decreases in terms of demand, the opposite will happen. Can you see how linked they are? Like how I did my little lines running everywhere down here. Okay, I hope you have your breakfast cereals every morning, eh? Like I don't. I'm sorry, I do. Okay, right. Now, we're going to look at the value or contribution, okay, of these sectors in terms of development, etc. But please note, I know the curriculum doesn't state define GNP or GDP, etc. But it's important. I know you've done it before, but it's important to revise your concepts, learners. Because if you don't understand your concept and it's applied in an explanation, you're going to have problems understanding the explanation. So let's look at these concepts first before we go further. All right, let's look at the first one, gross domestic product. What is it? It measures the value of goods and services produced within a country's borders. All right, within all the production, like in South Africa, within South Africa. All right, and by citizens and non-citizens alike, whoever is in South Africa and they producing, okay, whether it's citizens, non-citizens, all right, and it's for a specific period, generally a year. That's how it's worked out. All right, let's look at gross national product. It measures again the value of goods and services produced only by a country's citizens. Now, this is no more non citizens, but it also includes domestically and abroad, means within the borders and outside the borders for a specific period, again, generally a year. Okay, we've got an understanding of this. All right, let me go further if it allows me. Now, let's look at this, the GDP and the GNP, and look at how it works. All right, it's used to indicate the size of a country's economy and not necessarily how developed it is. Okay, I'm going to come to that point now because I know you're thinking, what am I saying here? All right, let's take it step by step. All right, the GDP obviously is the main indicator used to determine the size of a country's economy. Now, I'm going to throw in another concept into the mix in order to explain this size and the difference between size and how developed a country is. I'm going to throw in this, I know it's not in your curriculum, but it'll make the understanding easier. Okay? Now, I'm going to throw in the concept of per capita gross domestic product. All right? Gross domestic product referring to GDP. Okay? Right. Is the country's economic output per person. Now, how do we work this out? How we calculate it? We divide the overall GDP, all the goods, services within the boundaries of a country, blah, blah, blah. You got that. All right. By its population. So let's say a country's GDP is $1 trillion and it has 50 million people. We then divide it, the 1 trillion by the 50 million to get an average per person. So obviously, if there's higher development, the average would be higher. Okay, you got that. Now let's look at what we meant by it talks about the size of the economy and not how developed it is. All right, let's look at China. Yeah, huge. Second largest economy in the world after the United States. All right, But look at the top 10 countries' GDP per capita. It doesn't even appear here. Okay, so it may have a large economy because it has a lot of people. You understand? Over 1.3, 1.4 billion people or more and counting. You understand? But although it produces so much, if you divide what the GDP of China is, you understand, of $12.24 trillion, and you divide it by uh, over 1.4 billion people or more, approximately more, you understand, you'll find that the per capita gross domestic product is lower than maybe if you take Monaco, which has maybe a certain number of people, has a lower uh, number of sorry, has a lower population, and if you divide it, it's different. I've got another example here. You take the United States, all right, and it makes 19.39 billion. Okay. Or for instance, let's take something like Japan, which is better example, 4.87 trillion people, trillion in terms of GDP dollars. All right, I do apologize for that. So it's much smaller in terms of the GDP. You understand? But China has 1.4 billion people compared to Japan, which may have 100 or so million people. And if you divide, you'll find that the per capita GDP for Japan is greater. All right, you got that? Let's go on. Now let's look at development and how the sectors indicate development. All right, now let's look at it down here. Let's look at USA. And during this period, of course, it changes all the time, and India. In USA at this stage, the tertiary employment, all right, was 79%. All right. Whereas in India, employment in tertiary was 53%. Huge difference. All right. And if you look at India, the primary was 18%, and the USA, it was 1%. All right. Now, that is a good indication that in developed countries, they have a larger percentage of labor force involved in tertiary activities, quaternary activities included in tertiary in this little resource, all right, and a small percentage involved in primary activities compared to developing countries. All right. Now we have these highly industrialized because of the large population of India, and maybe the industries would be more than US. Sometimes you even find that trend that industries are higher in developed, but not necessarily. That is why I use this example. All right, to clarify that you can have situations different. But the biggest indicator here is looking at the tertiary and primary and the labor force or employment in those sectors actually gives you a lovely indication of the development. All right. I just threw a question here, learners. Explain the difference in percentage of employment between different sectors, between India and the United States. And we just discussed that. Can you see I'm phrasing it in the question? That tertiary in the United States is higher compared to India, whereas in India, the employment is higher for primary compared to the United States. All right? And give reasons for your answer. We can then talk about how developed a country is. All right, United States is highly developed compared to India. All right, they have all the resources, etc., and therefore people's per capita income is higher. More machinery is used in the United States compared to a developing country where there's still a subsistence economy. There's so many things that you can talk about in this question. Just threw you a little question there. All right, let's go on. Trends regarding contribution of different sectors to GDP in South Africa. Let's look at South Africa. All right. I want to look at two little things here. Number one, there's a little information here showing you from 2001 to 2011. And what we noticed that in the primary sector, it dropped from 10.7 to 7%. There's a drop. In the secondary sector, it dropped from 14 to 13.7. And in the tertiary sector, it increased from 74.5 to 79. All right, which shows that there's growth in South Africa regarding moving towards more development. All right, that now more machinery is being used in the primary sector, better quality of life. All right, although we still have various challenges, okay, but it's moving forward. All right, therefore, the tertiary sector is actually increasing, better education, more money, more finances available to many people. All right, so we are moving in the right or in the growth position regarding development. All right, so you must notice here, all right, that when we looked at this, we saw that there's growth happening. Now, how is the growth happening? If you look here, you find there's general growth. This is agriculture, which is primary, mining, which is primary, all right, in this area here. That's your primary. Then we have secondary, okay, and then, of course, from there to there, okay, secondary. Then we have our tertiary, all right, sectors. And we notice that growth is generally occurring as the years go by. You understand? From 2007 to 2011, all right, growth is happening in more or less all sectors in this area. Can you see it? In all sectors, growth is happening. Okay. But what would you notice? That if you look at this agriculture, all right, and we even look sometimes at mining and we compare it here, you'll notice that generally growth is happening faster in the tertiary and the generally the tertiary there, it's happening much faster than the other sectors, which is showing you, all right, development happening in South Africa. We're becoming more and more developed as it is. All right, we're not there yet, but we're becoming more. All right, so what can we see from this? That it must be noted that there's a general increase in contribution from all sectors. All right. But the percentage contribution is increasing at a faster rate for tertiary activities. All right. And decreasing for secondary activities. Please note that, learners, each one is increasing, but this is happening because the tertiary activity percentage is increasing at a much faster rate. Have you got that, learners? All right, so we can look at this question. Just a little thinking. It's all the same information. So I was showing growth regarding development. Give reasons for your to support this statement. All right, and you can see here. All right, there's growth happening right through All right, it's increasing continuously from all sectors, and the tertiary sector is increasing much faster than the other sectors. All right, just based on this, there will be various other answers that you could look at here. And of course, you have to base it on the resource that's given to you in your assessment. Okay, if they ask for general answers, you can go generally. Okay, so some interesting trends, okay, in terms of South Africa. I just got a little activity here. And please, you must learn. Don't assume it's simple. Learn how to interpret your resources, your tables. Okay, this shows contribution to GDP, right? By various activities. They can be grouped into primary, secondary, and tertiary. All right. So, first question, state the activity that contributed the most to the GDP and least, respectively. So I look at my figures. These are my percentages. All right. And I'm looking here. I see 12.4, 9.5, 5.5.2, 3.0, 2.2, 1.8, and I see 1.8 is the lowest. I didn't ask you for an economic. All right. So it's electricity and gas, which is the lowest, the least. Okay. Then I go for the most and I keep checking 12.4, 9.1, 5.1, 5.23, 2.2, and I'm going on. You understand? And I'm seeing there's nothing more than 21. And I hope to be correct there. Yes, I am. And that is your finance and real estate and business services that contributed the most. Can you see it, learners? You get questions like this on various occasions, and sometimes he's just taking the information from there. Okay, right. Now let's look at the next question, which takes it a little further. Which sector does the following activities belong? All right, and give reasons for your answers. All right, let's take construction. All right. Construction, there it is there. You're constructing, you're making something. And if you're constructing, it's a secondary activity. All right. You're constructing something. All right. Then real estate. What is that? That's the selling of the houses. All right. Which is now offering the service of selling. Okay. That is when you're selling, it's tertiary. And then lastly, it's mining, where you're extracting raw materials from the earth. Okay. And that becomes your primary. So secondary, tertiary, primary. All right. So you're asking to classify them. Look at the last one. State the percentage contribution by the primary sector. Now, what do I need to do here? I need to identify which ones is the primary sector. I'm looking here. I see, whoa, there's agriculture here, 2.2. There's mining here, 5.2. So 2.2 plus 5.2 is 7.4. I'm checking now. These are all secondary and tertiary. All right, so I got it. And if I look at 2.2 plus 5.2 is 7.4%. All right. Some just simple things here, but sometimes we find learners, it's the simple things that you don't get right that then creates challenges for the so called more challenging questions. But they're not challenging questions, but the basis you need to know. You need to know this, and then they later on may ask you a question related to these so called simpler questions. Okay, and you'll be able to answer. Of course, look at your past papers, learners, all right? Because that'll give you a good indication of the different order of questions. I just focused on this one because people sometimes, or learners, do have problems interpreting graphs. All right, learners, I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I wish you all the best. Goodbye.